as long as you're, an ad to your community, you're an ad. Use the party, use politics. I do, but to what goal? To win? Win what? How about win our freedom?
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 332. I'm talking to Ernest Hancock, who is with Freedom's Phoenix website. He also used to organize the Freedom Summit in Arizona. He has been a longtime activist, and he's got his own show at Freedom's Phoenix. He's been around a while, and we're just going to talk about what he's been up to and all the things that have been happening in the movement and recently and in the past. How are you, Ernest?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for asking. It's good to talk to a fellow libertarian and dissect what's up.
So I always like to just start at the beginning, Ernest. How did you become a libertarian?
Oh, God. All right, I can do this in like 2 minutes, but no interruptions. I was like 28, married, just having our fourth child. It was my father had a company called Alcan Traveler that made touring motorcycle camping trailers, and it was real high quality. He retired and made one for himself, and it became like a business right away. And a lot of magazines and so on. And that was right when the travel restrictions in Europe were coming down, where you didn't have to have a passport or visa or whatever to go from Spain to France. And so it was a lot of traveling people were doing, and they needed what my father manufactured as distributorships in Europe for all of the people coming and touring Europe now that the borders were open and everybody was traveling and going around little cobble streets if I got to have somewhere to sleep. So it was at the time in 88 when the Dukakis Bush, I'm old. I'm 64, born 61, graduated high school 79. So yes. I gives you my I grew up in the shadow of the mushroom cloud, the Cold War kind of stuff. Well,
yes.
So what happened was I wanted to research where my father would ship to in Europe. Is it Denmark, France, Italy? I mean, where would you go? What's the tariffs? How does this work? Because we're going to save America. Because in 88, everything was all about the trade deficits, which is now they're finally talking about. And back then, it was obvious to me charge whatever they're charging. I mean, it was just so corrupt. So immediately, someone that was, truth, justice, American way guy, and find out that there was this bill called the Omnibus Trade Competitiveness Act of 88. It was right at the end of the Reagan administration. And what happened was you could read the New World Order in print. I mean, I never even heard the term, but I mean, it was, business of America is business, and we're going to regulate and get a cut of all the business. I mean, it's that kind of thing. And the Cold War was winding down. The Soviet Union had, collapsed. It was just, right in that time. And we're going to try and muscle in and get all of these Eastern Bloc people to be on our side kind of thing. Well,
yes.
I was of the mind that exporting was going to be, patriotic America thing to do. And I told my father, I said, well, I'll help you. I'll start doing some research on this and see what's up. Immediately, within a few months, it became very obvious that our government was corrupt. And it was just they had taken over, and they're going to do whatever they're going to do to their benefit and screw America and Americans and shipping off jobs everywhere. I mean, it was just all economic stuff. And I realized, I'm like, how do they get away with this? It was election law. They eliminated competition. They made sure dissenting voices didn't have any kind of platform. No movement was going to get going. That kind. And you didn't have the internet, so it was all pamphleting and flyers and laissez-faire books and that kind of thing. Fee Foundation with their books. It was very lean pickings. And I a lot of my activism came to where I filed suit against the state of Arizona on 44 election laws. I went all the way to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and I'm just being a butthead, young kid, make them say it. I want to know how you're getting away with this. This is unconstitutional as hell, blah, 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 blah. So to me, I didn't really care what the judge or the government said. It was the theater of it. It was for people to know what was going on, that, you're not alone kind of thing. So as I did that, that's when the libertarians knew what I was doing and understood it. And they had me speak at 92. I think Andre Maru was running, and it was the state convention then, and I was the luncheon speaker. And so I, what I was doing and why. And they were good, hardcore libertarians in Arizona back then. And they were just, well, didn't you get the memo? I mean, this is how business is done. This is how the government works, And so then you got to start reading Ayn Rand. You got to read Atlas Shrugged. You got to read Fountainhead and Anthem, We to Live, that kind of stuff. And I was heavy into science fiction and history, historical novels and geographical novels like Clavell and Michener, that kind of stuff anyway. So that was kind of my worldview, different cultures and economics and, society and how the people that use push and pull with government as opposed to meritocracy. So that was all that kind of rang true with me. And then you get into Austrian economics. And so I quickly became, I was an activist. I was like, people need to know what's up. I got kids and grandkids going into this stuff. And we knew that by 12, 16, around in there, it was when our kids would be our age then. We had kids that were like 5, 6, that kind of thing. So I knew that 20 years, here we go. So my wife was on board and she said, whatever you think you can make a change for the children, kind of, man, let's go kick ass. So I go, you got to understand, it's like learning 16 recipes for beans. I mean, it's going to be lean. They don't reward this kind of stuff, just saying. So we became activists, very involved in the Libertarian Party because of the principles. I wasn't trying to win something or get a brass ring or, that wasn't my thing. So I became county chairman in Maricopa County. So this is where a lot of my activism came from, and running for office and encouraging others and running slates and doing city races and initiatives and recalls and all that. And then a lot of people, knew me here in Arizona. And by the time the Ron Paul thing came in January of 2007, and we found out we're publishing, Freedom's Phoenix's online, news and political opinion website. And we've done our Freedom Summits, and we've had a lot of the big names, in the liberty community, the Lou Rockwells and Ron Pauls and Peter Schiffs and Walter Block and James Bovard and Vince Prem, all these guys, L. Neil Smith, Jordan Page, Cody Wilson, Patrick Byrne. I mean, a lot of these guys, have touchstone with the Freedom Summit. And as time went on, it was obvious to everybody and to me, we had a family restaurant and different businesses and stuff that we did, but my forte was in Made You Look. I mean, this is the issue in this election cycle. This is, all the candidates that represent, sign, everywhere a sign. In 2006 is where the Ron Paul, that Lovolution logo came from. I had used it, created that in my 2006 campaign for Secretary of State. And then, when we found out he was running, oh man, watch this, because I knew it was going to happen. And then, that's how a lot of people around the country know the kind of stuff we do. But the main thing, there's a lot that's learned through there. I understand you're a lot inside the political party game of delegates and, stuff and electors and everything. I was immersed in that. I ran for national chair at least 3 or 4 times, trying to, get the principles out there, and that it belonged, the support should go to the activists, and the issues. So it's, I just been kind of, around, I know just because I won't go away, and we have a lot of fun, and we've been very successful in getting the message out, and that's the reason I became libertarian was because I tell you, primarily because I was Christian. I just right and wrong, good and evil, bad guys versus good and so on. And the libertarian platform and philosophy was the most Christ-like. It was the good of people, the meritocracy of people. It was not, there was no initiation of force. There was no mandate. There was no making you. It was recognizing the power of free will and that kind of. So I guess if I had to put it short, um, Christianity's libertarian. That's where I went and why.
That's a very interesting story. When did you ran for national chair? So when did you get involved with the party? When did you run for national chair?
Yeah, you got to be old enough. I mean, all the stuff that was going on. We got the Wall Street Journal in the late 90s were going, Arizona, the libertarian state. I mean, we were really, in their face. We'd go up against traditional, like the NRA, National Republican Apologists. We go after them for being hypocritical, not endorsing libertarians that are hardcore. I mean, we were really taking on bat, really would pick our target and go after it. I'm not in opposition to the Libertarian Party as much as just, leave us alone. And politics is just not the avenue. It's general public opinion. We use politics to be on the ballot, to get to have a say, to participate, to be printed, to do our channels. The party has become irrelevant because they have chosen not to be relevant, right? They're trying to soften the message and be right when you needed it to be the hardcore message. So now you have, Ron Paul, his son, and Massey taking it, and some others, that have done, Dave Smith doing a good job. So the other groups that came in trying to resurrect principle as practical and so on have always been attacked or won't be financially supported, or there's a lot of history there. But my thing has always been laser beam focus on the proper role of government was the defense of individual rights. If they didn't do that, then why are they there? So it's that's where I wind up being. It's just usually best described as anarcho-capitalist or libertarian, or I'm a leave me aloneist or whatever. And a lot of my friends are libertarian.
Well, that's interesting. So what did you were you how much were you involved in the Ron Paul campaign? Well, and what was your role there in either campaign, 2008 or 2012?
Well, we started it in '08. That logo, the Ron Paul Levolution logo, I'm the one that created that.
Yes.
And we went around the country. I was sponsored by people that just, they had frequent flyer miles, or on their American Express, they had free miles, or they just buy tickets or whatever. They would donate for me to go around the country to all these meetups and teach them how to make those signs, how to make the template, where to get the source the material, what font to use, and it became a thing. And everybody wanted to know, well, what do we say, man? You say whatever you want. I'm just showing you how to say, And we really made a big effort not to have a central plan for freedom. That was not the goal. It was for them to express themselves. And back then, remember, it wasn't digital like it is now. It was magnetic tape. People would do our videos on tapes and they would send them to us. And then we would load them up on this newfangled internet video thing. And it just blew up. It just went everywhere. And everybody had their own style, which was the point, to have their own version, their own, like Memphis was Elvis and Ice-T. I mean, it's just that kind of thing. So it was, I was probably pretty one of the most known guys because I went everywhere. I was the street activist. I would go to these places wherever Ron was for that weekend. We'd show up on like Tuesday or Wednesday, make hundreds of signs, with the local activists, put them up everywhere, and all the candidates got saturated with them everywhere. It's just that wherever they went, it was Ron Paul stuff. And I was talking to Ron one time, and he said after the first election cycle, he was going, I go, well, what did your colleagues have to say? The other congressmen on the floor had to say something. and they went that first year in the summer of '07. I think they went to break, back to their congressional districts. And when they came back, they were voting, and it was some bill, something, it was, of course, 400 and whatever to one. I mean, that kind of thing. And they go to him and they said, Ron, what the hell, man? What are you doing? How are you doing this? Why are these people? And he just pointed up at the board. He goes, that's why. Doctor, no, I'm not, part of this crap. And so it was the '08 campaign was much more spontaneous and pure, and it was way ahead of any political party or effort or activist or anything like that. And then you had the 12. We were more servants. We had big sign making production area and multimedia, and we just helped everybody do what they wanted to do, because the 12 campaign had already gotten politicized way too much. It was kind of a central mindset of, hey, we could really like do stuff and be professional politicians and so on. And that was not the flavor of it, really. Certainly not in '08. But then a lot of the new guys came and jumped on and they're having fun. So that I was never part of the Ron Paul campaign, intentionally. We had talked about it, and so I go, nope, nope, nope. Talk to the hand. I don't want to have nothing to do inside politics. I don't vote. Since '02, I'll run for office and do all kinds of stuff. But after you find out what's really going on, I choose to not lie to myself. So it was general public opinion. It was the message that Ron Paul was given. It was the libertarian rhetoric that we were able to, it's like the injection of the libertarian infection into the bone marrow of American politics, for which there is no cure. That's what we were doing.
Okay, so do you think was anything learned from 2008 that was applied in 2012? Because neither campaign won the nomination, but they were just kind of there, and I would hope the campaigns learned something, or you said it got more.
Yeah, well, who learned what? It depends. See, that's the problem with the Libertarian Party and party politics, is you got to be clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Ron Paul wasn't in the Libertarian Party, though.
No, I know. It's the same thing. The Republican primary. What was the goal? What was the goal? So as libertarian activists, the Ron Paul revolution was libertarian. I mean, get over it, okay? So it's what happens is you have, what is the goal? Well, of course, they were thinking, well, we could, win. We'd be in charge of everything. We get the brass ring, and we could use this as leverage for us to get, more votes on things that we want. We'll get the Fed audited, Then it was like, audit? I wouldn't believe anything they said anyway. In the Fed didn't come from Ron. It came from the people, And so all these libertarian ideals, that was our goal. It was, how long can we keep them up at the podium? So when you get into campaigns, it's about, we want you to take all your revolutionaries, make it all those signs, and we want you to go over here and man the phones, and we want you to walk the precincts, and we want you to get out the vote of the whatever, and we're like, I think we'll decline. We don't want you putting up those signs. The locals are getting mad, and the party bosses are coming and talking. I'm like, oh yeah, if I see some bitch putting them up, I'll get them for you. Don't worry about it. Screw them. We were not worried about party politics. It was all about general public opinion. That's why you're seeing what you're seeing is happening now. It was, the genesis of that was over decades of people understanding what the real issues were. And now it's, freaking overspending and, oh my God, debt. That's going to change politics for a while from now on. You watch.
Okay, so after what do you think Ron Paul did right or could have done better in his campaign?
A lot of people wanted him to be more aggressive, assertive. Take the kneecap him. Stab him in the butt. I mean, do something. to be more aggressive. And that wasn't his style. So it just wasn't him. But the thing that he did well was be consistent. So all his little, 1 to 5 minute speeches, 5 minute speech, 3 minute speech, whatever he was doing, to an empty house, but he was on record, and those were always available from way back. So C-SPAN stuff. So what happened is people would go and, who is this guy? They start research. Go, he's been saying this same stuff for decades. This is who he is, and the people that support what he's saying, this is why they're doing it. Hell, he did run as a libertarian in '88. He was not going to let him run away from that, So it was very clear that he was consistent on what he thought the problems were and why. It was a principle thing. But when you get into politics, certainly even the Libertarian Party, whenever you create, it's called Steiger's Law here in Arizona. It's a well-known political whatever. And whenever you create an organization around a movement or a cause, sooner or later, always, the organization becomes more important than the reason you created it. And that has proved out to be true all the time.
Have you paid any attention to Javier Milei in Argentina?
Yeah. What we did is when that was going on, we were still on the Love Bus Liberty tour. We were, touring America for a few years before we bought the land here in the desert. And I'm on the Love Bus, 19 MCI bus. We built a studio in and living quarters and everything. It's really nice. And our base for building our home. I think that Milei is a really good example, and I think he's playing it right. You'd be very flattering to Donald Trump, and you kind of encourage him by example of how much love and attention you're getting for, chainsawing government and all that kind of stuff. But I would see a much more team with like Elon Musk's new party and Javier Milei kind of alliance. You can watch that coming to where you had the more traditional get inside, fix it thing like UKIP in United Kingdom, not Assange, what's his name? Anyway, the guy that was in Parliament that had the Independence Party in the United Kingdom, and he's always going
Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage. So yeah, Nigel Farage is, and Trump are kind of in the same mindset of it can be fixed, and Javier Milei and Elon Musk, I think, are on, needs to be gutted, and so that was my experience with recognizing Javier Milei and what he was doing and how effective and motivating and possibly successful that was going to be. But that kind of thing has been avoided in the liberty community. It didn't used to be. It takes strong, certain type of people to be able to put your chest out and I don't care. Sling the arrows, Now we're going to talk about this and we're going to have people understand the importance of the principle behind certain planks that you have. So this is, how I operate.
Well, okay then. That's yeah. Well, I think that's made for a good talk. Do you have anything else to say before we go, Ernest?
No, I'm, I looking at your stuff and the people you've interviewed and so on, I could see that you're looking to fix it, make it better, be part of a solution. So, which is cool,
Yeah.
I just want people to open their mind to what is the real goal. The real goal is, I'll end with this. This will explain mindset. You hear freedom and liberty a lot, like they're interchangeable. And,
Yes.
and there was a description one time that really made it, me understand the difference. And my show is Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock. The Declaration of Independence, was 10 years before the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was just so we didn't go into another revolution because they, needed to be put some limits on this Constitution thing they created. And the Declaration of Independence made it really clear and even said that the purpose of government is the defense of individual rights. When it doesn't do that, it's time to alter or abolish. It's your right. It's your duty. And I go, well, hell, what they said, you know? So my whole thing has been if you're going to have any government, if it's the one taking away your rights, it's the one stealing from you, it's the one mandating what you can and can't do, if it's the one that's in your way, because the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that pursuit of happiness is like to mold your circumstances, your happenstance. It's not like joy or an emotion or feel your happiness, your happenstance, your conditions need your liberty, and your liberty fashions raw materials into your property, you know, so and your hands can defend your life. So life, liberty, property is kind of three ways of saying the same thing. The pursuit of happiness is the result of that life, liberty, and property being able to give you more freedom options. So freedom, I am free to build my home out here in the desert. I am free. No permit, don't need to ask anybody. I'm out in the middle of nothing. I'm going because I'm free to do it. I'm not in a cage. I don't have somebody with a gun on my forehead. I'm not in shackles. I am free. But are you at liberty? I don't know. You're not at liberty to do that. Did you get a permit? I mean, you know, that kind of. So liberty and freedom are kind of a little bit different things. Liberty is the recognition by some institution or something, and a culture, a general public opinion, a recognition of your freedoms. And the freedom is something you do yourself, you take. You know, they're not giving it to you. They want to control you all the time. So it's being an inspiration, doing these kinds of things, having this attitude is what I instill with my children and grandchildren, and them still be accepted in polite society and get invited to, you know, all the Christmas parties. I mean, rule one, don't be a dick, you know, because that kind of trumps everything, and you get to have your say. So as long as you're, an add to your community, you're an add. Use the party, use politics. I do, but to what goal? To win? Win what? How about win our freedom and our liberty? Pace.
Yes, well, thank you, Ernest. Where can we find you out there?
Freedomsphoenix.com, freedom with an S, Phoenix spelled out, Phoenix.com.
Yes.
Occupytheland.org is our next big project that we're doing. And Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock, .com, or on Freedom's Phoenix, you'll find the show. And we're always out here helping people, being the second or third guy to pimp their really good idea and run it up to where everybody can see it. And, what are you doing? And we do a lot of that. So that's what our sites are for.
Okay, well, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, go buy my novel, Escape from the Village. People are giving me money at buymeacoffee.com, and check out my Substack. Thank you, Ernest Hancock. I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.